So if you listen or follow us on social media on Jewel of Arabia, you will see yesterday when we started walking, the wind was so strong that I likened it to the front cover of one of my favourite books called The Worst Journey in the World. And it was written by a man called Apsley Cherry Garrard when he was in Antarctica. And today, the front cover of another book came to my mind, because this morning we've been at the most extraordinary place that I'm going to have a chat to you about now in a minute. But there was a book written by a man called Gavin Maxwell, who spent time with the great desert explorer Wilfred Thesiger in the marshes of Iraq. And that book was titled A Reed Shaken by the Wind. And the sound I've been listening to this morning has been reeds blowing in the wind, which is an unusual sound in the middle of a desert. But we're in a really unusual place, and a really unique place. And I'm so glad we came, because it meant that we've had to drive for at least an hour inland away from the route we're following. And you know what? I was tired yesterday and I thought, well, is it worth it? Should we make the effort to go? But I'm so glad we did, because what I've seen this morning is just amazing. And sitting with me across the table is an amazing guy called Kudzai Tibugari. And Kudzai is from Zimbabwe. And because I've been to Zimbabwe, to the Chimanimani Mountains.
Wonderful.
Because in Oman, I worked with a fantastic organisation called Outward Bound Oman.
Okay.
And we work with the youth, the young people of Oman. And Outward Bound actually also has a base in Zimbabwe. And they train about 5,000 young people a year at a beautiful centre in the Chimanimani Mountains.
That's the mountainous part of Zimbabwe.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So
Yes.
I went there about 5 years ago. So you know, how does someone from Zimbabwe end up working here in the Bauer Nimr Reedbeds, which is where we are? So what's your role? What do you do?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. So my name, like you've said, Kudzai Tibugare. I'm in charge of the water treatment plant for all the operations. So basically what we are doing here is we are treating the water which is coming from a Petroleum Development of Oman, which is PDO. When they are doing their oil explorations, the water which is coming with the oil, they separate their oil, then the water has to be disposed. They had some ancient methods which they were using, the deep well disposals, which were having a lot of disadvantages to the environment, and also the operation costs were too high. Now, the wetlands here has replaced those deep well disposals. So basically what we do, we receive the water here, we do some further separation where we recover some oil again from the produced water and send it back to the client. Then the remaining water, we flow it now to the wetlands. Now in the wetlands now, that's where now we are now removing any excess oil which is left, so that the water can be clean and be used for other uses. We have got different species which are growing in our wetlands. In total, we have 490 hectares of these planted wetlands, which consists of 5 different species: the Phragmites australis, which is the common reed, then the Typha domagensis, Chenoplectus erytolaris, Cyprus lavigatus, and Juncus rigidus.
So just jumping in there, Kudzai, because some people might not be able to imagine hectares.
Yes.
In terms of size, because one thing that really amazed me this morning was how big this is. Is it about 4 kilometres by 4.5 kilometres?
Yes, the entire facility now is sitting on 4 kilometres by 4.5 kilometres. So that's how big the wetlands is. And the beauty of this place, it is the largest constructed wetlands in the whole world. Where now even the treated water goes to the evaporation ponds, which is around 810 hectares.
Wow.
Now, if you can imagine now these plants growing over 400 hectares, it creates a habitat for wildlife. And we are again in the migratory route. The birds are flying. Then we have introduced fish in our ponds, which also attract the birds to come to our side. So at the end of the day, we have got some wildlife which are now resident on our side. We're talking of the birds. We have had birds experts coming to do the monitoring, to check how many bird species they can get on our site. And we have recorded over 130 bird species on our site.
Yeah, well, when you kindly showed us round this morning, I was looking out of the window and I saw 4 or 5 marsh harriers floating over the reeds. So the reeds grow about 2 meters tall, and there's these beautiful marsh harriers, and there were black-winged stilts, there were flamingos, there were sandpipers. It was just incredible. The habitat that has been created. But almost created as a byproduct of the original purpose. So what do the reeds actually do? What? I know you put water in at one end, dirty water with a bit of oil in that's come up from under the ground, and then you get clean water at the other end. But in between those two, the start and the end, what role do the reeds play, and what role does nature play in cleaning the water?
Very good question, yes. So you see that the whole process of water treatment here is we just harness the benefits of nature here. Whenever there is water, oxygen, sunlight, and nutrients, the algae will form naturally. And now, growing these wetland plants in the reed beds at least gives some bit of resistance to the flowing water, which gives more time for the bacteria to grow and populate on the stems of the plants, where there will be oil sticking there. So when this bacteria now, which is the cyanobacteria, populates the stems, they start to break down the hydrocarbons. That is the process of the water treatment, basically.
Incredible. So the reeds are slowing the flow, and they're providing a sort of a surface for the algae to do their work.
Exactly. That is the main reason. And also, like I said, for this bacteria to thrive, there should be nutrients. So now these plants, they are annual plants, they die, then decompose, giving organic matter now to the bacteria, which is food. So now the process, we don't have to introduce any chemicals or any fertilizers. It's just there, it can operate naturally. It doesn't require any additional chemicals to it, which is good for the environment, which we are an environment company basically. So we basically looking into solutions which are nature-based, and this is one example of it, which is
fantastic. Which is why it's been so fascinating. Nature-based solutions have to be the best way to go for a sustainable future. And I was really impressed because, sadly, I have to confess, we got lost coming here to try and find you. And so we had to resort, when we got a signal, to good old Google Earth. And the green square that you see on Google Earth is incredible. So if you're a migrating bird, like Kudza said, if you're migrating from Africa to Asia, across Arabia, it must look like a McDonald's down below, and so tempting to drop in, which is clearly what happens. But you also mentioned fish before, which I think was the tilapia fish.
Yes.
Why did you introduce them? Was that a source of potential food for people or for wildlife, or what role do they play?
Okay, yes. So now the Nile tilapia, to begin with, the type of fish which we chose, it can live in brackish water, in dirty water. It can thrive well. It's not sensitive. So why we introduced it was basically to kill the life cycle of the mosquito. That was the main reason, because we don't want to be breeding mosquitoes here. So we brought in the fish so that it can kill the life cycle of the mosquito. And as the numbers started to increase, we realized birds were also getting interested.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, now it's a win-win even for the birds. They're coming now to enjoy the fish. And also we are getting the control of mosquitoes naturally.
Yeah, brilliant.
We're not spraying anything.
And we saw that beautifully, didn't we, about 20 minutes ago when we came around the corner. So we've been driving. So the whole plant is divided into a grid system of roads between the reed beds. And when we came around a corner with Kudzai earlier, lots of herons flew up and cormorants, because they've been gorging themselves on these tilapia fish.
Yes.
So everybody's happy, really. And what really impressed me, because I could see noticeably, so the whole thing is gravity fed.
Yes.
So from the start to the end, water flows naturally. And we had, because we're in an oil field area, before we started our visit, we had a very thorough health and safety briefing by the team here at Bauer Nimr. And as we went into there, you had a device which was a sulphurous gas alarm as well. So I mean, it's all the safety standards here are extremely high, which one always associates with PDO and Bauer Nimr. The fish, that's one thing that you've introduced, but the water at the end was so clean. There are plans now to use that for potentially other things, for agricultural output or trees. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So now, when the water is treated, it is now available for any agricultural use, and we have already done some trials, which is kind of a proof of concept that the water we are producing is good for agriculture. We have done a trial around 2019, 2020 there, where we planted different species and we're watering them with this water, and some of them thrived, some of them died, which is common in a trial. So now we have got the results. We have got the names of the trees or the plant species which can survive in this water, which now there is an ongoing discussion to find any kind of development to be made from these results which we got. That's one beauty. Yes.
And there was something else you mentioned that I think our listeners might be interested to hear. When you were giving us a presentation at the start, you mentioned the reduction, so the change from a traditional method of trying to separate the water and the oil, which used pumps and it was quite cost expensive, but also you mentioned the difference in the carbon footprint of the biological process, the sort of CO2 output compared to the traditional process. Could you talk a little bit about that?
True, because if you look at the past method, and some oil and gas companies, they're still using that old method where they inject into the earth's surface. They call them the deep well disposals. But now with this wetlands technology now, because of the green plants which are growing, and we also use gravity, we are not pumping this water. There's a height elevation from each stage of treatment. And as I mentioned, over 490 hectares of green, there's carbon sequestration now. We are removing a substantial amount of carbon from the air, just from this project. So you can appreciate that the main goal was only to replace this expensive and not environmentally friendly method of disposing the water which is coming from oil and gas with a wetlands, but now the wetlands has come in with biodiversity. Animals are growing in the wetlands. We are also benefiting from the carbon credits. So there's a lot of benefits with this system.
It's a real win-win story as far as I can see. And I think it's just yet another story of innovation happening here in Oman and also incredible biodiversity. So Kudzai, thanks ever so much for your time this morning. I know you're a super busy guy and you've got a meeting coming up in a little while, but it's been absolutely fascinating, and I'm so glad, going back to how we started, so I'm so glad we made the effort to come here. And what we're going to do this afternoon, we're going to drive back to the coast. We're going to reconnect to the route followed by Bertram Thomas in 1927, because tomorrow is going to be a really exciting day, because he didn't take many photographs on his journey, but the photographs he did take we have copies of, and we're going to look for the exact place, because at this point of his journey he left the coastal plains of Al Jazer and his camels went up onto a high plateau, and to get up there he had to find a wadi or a valley that his camels could go up. And when he went up, he found lots of archaeological amazing things on the side of that valley, and no one really understands what the significance of these remains are, even to this day. There's one specialist called Dr. Jeff Rose at a university in Portugal. He's considered the expert globally, so we're going to be driving back to the start. We're going to try and find that wadi this afternoon. We're going to camp, and then tomorrow we're going to try and get up onto that plateau and find these old archaeological signs. So every day is a fascinating day, Kudzai, but today has really been up there. I'm absolutely so impressed with what you do. So thank you very much.
Sure, Mike. Thank you very much. And all the best on your trip.
Thank you.